How long is your list?
The Panther 48.
Willing to die for?
The Panther 48.
Willing to die for? How long is your list?
What is the tribal self?
The Panther
The
48.
tribal self is what goes above the immediate acquaintances of the social.
Willing to die
The
for?
family, the people you know, live next door.
You would be willing
I'm
to
talking
die
about
for?
tribal
The
self.
Panther 48.
I'm talking about those living, those yet unborn, your ancestors is tied into the tribal self.
The Panther 48.
What does that mean? That means that the tribal self constantly reminds us
Willing to die for?
that we don't have the right
How long is your
to
list?
claim independence
The Panther 48.
of the history of which we are part. So, don't nobody care that you individually were the slave in South Carolina. The tribe was
revolutionary philosophy, an ideal and concepts developed by three longtime revolutionaries for the continuation of Panther ideology and the giving of proper knowledge and information for movements to move forward and progress. The three members of the Panther 48 is myself, Brother Syke, Brother Robert Ward Williams, and Brother E, which I'll let these brothers introduce themselves in a minute. I'm gonna read the Panther 48 mission statement, and then I'm gonna pass it to Brother Robert Ward Williams to introduce who and give you a little background on himself. The mission of the Panther 48 is this: to establish a perpetual, stabilized repository of revolutionary information geared toward the proper development of leadership for organizations, communities, households, and self, while offering guidance for all groups of builders for the sake of continued continuity. The knowledge is founded on historical and contemporary Panther ideologies, but is universally applied. Welcome to the 48. Now,
just like I do, a quick history lesson. If you ever come across, if you're part of any of the Panther iterations that broke off, spun off of the New Black Panther Party, and have come across the four isms, the Black nationalism, Pan-Africanism, African-centered thought, Black liberation theology, and the fifth that we can't talk about, understand that it was through the conversations of the three of us over a period of time, bumping heads and disagreeing and agreeing and all of those things that came out of. And the one ideology that we all agreed upon, whether it was said or unsaid, understood or not understood, as we've grown to understand it, is that fifth one, is that one, if you look at all of these issues that we have between organizations and personalities, the Panthers and us and the nation, and, you know, oh my God, you know, what is it? What are those cats that are always trying to fight somebody? That just real pissed off down in Orlando, yelling at people, Black Hebrew Israelites, whether it's them cats or the Moors, or whoever it is. If you look at them, the one thing that they all have in common is that they're all crystallized in a single ideology. And that's something that we've understood. You can't let that shit happen. You can't, that's the way that really movements are destroyed, is because we crystallize, and organizations are destroyed because organization is a crystallization to whatever degree of particular ideologies and whatnot. And so when we put ourselves in that, it makes it real easy for the feds to come in. Because if you're a nationalist, I know exactly how to come at you, because all you've got is nationalist stuff. If you're a Pan-African, I know how to come at you, because that's all the shit you got. And that's the essence of a guerrilla. Che and them knew that. You don't stick to one way. You don't stick to one thing. You make yourself an amoeba. You flow in between these ideologies, because again, it's not the ideology that's important. It's us moving forward. So not sticking it, you know, the Wing Chun and all of them. I always try to get War to show me sticky hands and all of that. Is we get stuck with the sticky hands in one position, holding somebody, not realizing they're coming around the other way with another shot to the side of our head, because we're focused on this one ideology, on this one crystallization of our reality. And we're stuck there, and we can't see everything that's going on behind us, let alone be actually able to move with it, absorb the heat, and move on. We can't take that.
Yeah, the first thing I would like to say in regards to propaganda is just the word itself in terms of how it's manipulated and misused, because oftentimes especially as it applies to propaganda that's been targeted on grassroots organizations like the Black Panther Party, the New Black Panther Party, People's Black Panther Party, or Panthers in general, or Black movements in general, is that the information is typically came across as if it's informational or fact-based information. And so from that standpoint, a lot of times the listening audience and the public is not actually seeing this as actual targeted propaganda meant to destroy or bring down the organization. They just actually see it as if someone is doing an editorial or doing a publishing for your information on an organization, not realizing that there was a motive behind the intent and the way the information was portrayed, as well as a lot of oftentimes statistics to be added to the propaganda or to the quote unquote misinformation in order to skew the actual concept and the importance that that organization is having, an impact that it's having within the community. So the thing about propaganda is the wordplay itself, in terms of how the information is distributed to the public, the general masses. Often the people are misled in terms of what the nature is of why this information is even being promoted. And from that standpoint, as a result of propaganda, as a result of dealing with the machine that actually has more media coverage, more resources, the organizations are finding themselves in a position to where they have to spend more of their actual community time that should be going toward empowering the people to actually trying to fight the reputation, or try to fight against the negative propaganda. So from that standpoint, this is why it's always important, as it applies to propaganda, to make sure you do proper fact finding, you know your historical significance, you are in touch with the community, have your post to the community, so that when people get this misinformation, it is as plain as day that it is skewed and falsified. Even oftentimes the same thing may happen within the context of organizations. For instance, and I got to drop this out there because it's one of the things that always pissed me off, so to speak. Back when the New Black Panther Party, when we were part of the New Black Panther Party, we did the protest in Jasper where we was armed, and we had certain key members that were told to chamber around, and everyone had loaded rifles and shotguns, by the way. Even our own Final Call newspaper took some information off of the AP and actually just cut and paste that information in their newspaper and published it as information. And what they published was that the New Black Panther Party goes into Jasper with weapons without any ammunition in them. And this actually came from the AP, and they just cut and pasted information. So oftentimes, even the people that we want to trust in terms of delivering righteous information will fall victims to propaganda and fall victim to putting out misinformation. And that's the power of misinformation, that it typically is able to spread faster than progressive and positive information. This is why you find the news stations the way they are in terms of sensationalism in stories in the first place. People have been bred to accept and go propaganda as it applies to, I would call, trauma and drama type of information. So the general public has been geared to want to be messy, has been geared to want to hear, negative reports or sensational reports. And so from that standpoint, oftentimes propaganda is drifted and skewed to try to create this sensationalized story instead of just flat out telling the truth and delivering the facts.
The words in the English lexicon is practical and pragmatic. And again, I'm gonna use prison again. When I was in prison, one of the things that I did with a lot of young brothers was teach them about discipline, show them about focus, and about being on point, being on time, things like this. And in prison, you have a certain amount of time to get yourself together. And if you miss that time, like an example, they're gonna do what's called an in and out to get you ready to go eat, get you ready to go to chow, what we call chow. In and out is when they open your cell, give you time to get yourself together, get out and get in the day room so you can be prepared to go eat. If you're not ready for that, if you don't have your stuff together, you'll get locked in your cell and miss dinner. You get locked in your cell and miss lunch. You'll get locked in your cell and miss these things. So one of the things that I used to stress was about being prepared and being on point. And if a brother left his ID, if a brother left his shoes, if a brother left anything that he needed in order to function properly, he might have to give me 100 burpees. I might need that. We call that 0 to 100, off the Drake song. And you'd have a group of dudes standing around you in a circle while you doing these burpees. You going up and down, and they singing 0 to 100 real quick. Whole squad on that reel, they be singing this while you doing your burpees, getting these burpees done. And this was the type of discipline that I believed in expressing. Another thing came with the way we trained. We didn't just do the average train. The average dude training is bench press, push-ups, get his chest big, get his arms big, look big. And I believed in dealing with functional workouts. And when I say functional workouts, I'm talking about we did bar crawls, Spider-Man crawls, burpees, walking lunges, what are they called? Duck walks, things like that. Things that actually added to your functionality. And I remember the brothers used to ask me all the time, man, why are we doing all this weird stuff? Why are we doing these type of workouts? Why are we doing this? And they'll be complaining. I had one brother tell me one time, he say, man, I'm tired. And I said, we're working out, you're supposed to be tired. And he said, no, you don't get it. I said, my brain is tired. My brain has never been tired from a workout. And this was funny, but get to the point. These was the strongest dudes on the unit. These was the most powerful dudes on the unit. These was the best fighters. These was the same brother that told me the workouts made his brain tired. Had a fight with a guy. He ended up having a fight with a guy. X this guy out so fast and so easy. He turned to me and he said, I don't even feel like I had a fight. I can fight 3 more people. He said, it works. Brother Psych, it works. That's what he told me. And my point is, I'm telling this story because I'm talking about this being prepared from the perspective of the body, or the human body. My brother E, we did an interview with E last week, and E was talking about the earth and the things that we do to give back to the earth because the earth provides for us, and I love that. But one of my things is what we give to the body, because if we don't keep the body right, if we don't do what we need to do for the body, then the body is not going to serve us properly. It's like taking care of your vehicle. If you're not doing regular oil changes, regular tune-ups, rotating tires, doing the things, you can't be surprised if you go out one day and your vehicle stops on you on your way to work. And I think that's very important when it comes to being prepared and survival, is making sure that your body can deal with moving through the woods and deal with climbing over this mountain and climbing over this tree and running into these dangerous people that you may end up coming in contact with. From the minimalist point of view, I think it's very, very important to be non-attached. I was reading a lot on Bruce Lee when I was incarcerated, and I first got obsessed with non-attachment. I got obsessed with that because it helped me survive, because everything that I could possibly be attached to was taken from me. So I was trying to put myself in a mental space to deal with not having the things or the people that I'm used to having. So I got obsessed with non-attachment. Then I found out my obsession with non-attachment was attachment. I found out that I was attached to being non-attached, and that was an attachment. And then I read Bruce Lee, and he said, you have to be non-attached, but not obsessed with being non-attached at the same time. That's true non-attachment. And that's where you can find that balance, where you can actually be in the world and not of the world, where you can actually.
You can't do it. You can't access the intuition without the emotions being in a good place. You can't access them properly. It's just like measuring a board with a tape measure. If you don't know what you're doing with the tape measure, you're gonna measure it for 5 inches when it was supposed to be 15, or 1 in 15, 1 in 2/8 or whatever it is, because you're not able to interpret what it is you're seeing. If you're not emotionally well, when those when those intuitions come, you're not able to process them and use them and make that emotional decision, a decision based on your emotion, which the emotion, just like logic, is a way of accessing. It's not the be all and end all. It's a way of accessing something else. Both of them, emotion and logic, are a way, or a means. It's like the key maker. They're not a mean and ends to themselves. They're keys to get to something else. You can look at something, you can look at music mathematically and appreciate the fuck out of it. You can listen to it and not know how to add 2 + 2 and still appreciate it, because you're accessing the same thing 2 different ways. So that's why I say emotion and logic are on the opposite spectrum, because they're both just ways of accessing something of a higher realm, which is what we started, this whole conversation started out as, is accessing something beyond.
You can feel like I know that it's at the point now to where it's actually revolving back to the point of being more consolidated. It spread out and it became dozens, literally dozens of branches. Now some of those branches are starting to reconnect again and come back together and formulate again. It's not nowhere near to where it was when, obviously in its very beginnings, but it is going back to a position now to where it's coming back together. With that, I think the mentality of the Panther and the essence of the movement has more so, like I said, to do with those 3 S's, which is self-seeding and social, in terms of governance. And so we are at a position where we're having to address the philosophy as well as the ideology of what it means to be a Panther, which is why we got Panther 48 and us doing our part to try to bring that back around, because we're dealing with a class of people, not just Panthers, but there's a class of people that has forgotten the essence of critical thinking, the essence of putting in real work, and the essence of the preliminaries that you need to deal with in order to just step out in the field and say that not only are you willing, but you're ready and capable of operating at the capacity needed to work toward empowerment for your people. So I think that's where we at, is that I see some of the generations, and some people within the generations are starting to recognize that curve and reconnect with the middle generation and the elders and start, making amends and correcting some of the problems that has went on for the past 20 years, as Brother E and Brother Aaron will put it. So I see us getting back to a better position, not to say we're there yet or close to being there, but I see us coming back into the fold of working our way, away from that decline, going back into the incline. Now, the point being is a lot of time is taking place and a lot of mistakes are being made. And are we in a position to be able to play catch up? That is yet to be told, but I'm doing my part to help, address this curve going back onto the incline.
Essentially, and don't run for the hills when I say this, the members of the Supreme Court are gods, essentially. And this is why I say this is what I'm explaining to you. And amongst the Hebrew people, when and I bring this up because this is a Judeo-Christian society, and majority of people in this society claim to follow the principles of the Bible. Amongst the Hebrew people, they had a group of judges. They had a group of judges whose job it was to interpret their constitution, which was the Torah. And whatever they said went. Well, this group of judges, they was called the Elohim. When you see that inside scripture, you think they're talking about some spooky thing floating around in the sky. They was talking about men, human beings who had been given the supreme power to interpret their highest document. That's what they were talking about. And let's look at if you ever been to court in your life or ever seen a movie of a court scene. Let's break this court scene down. You have a judge who comes out in this all black robe, and he sits behind this bench, and that bench is sitting kind of up on the stage. The judge sits higher than everybody in the room. When the judge walks in the room, everybody in the room must stand up until the judge takes a seat. Then once the judge sits down, everybody can sit down.
I hate that.
When the judge stands up to get ready to walk out again, everybody must stand up until the judge exits the courtroom. Then everybody can sit down again. Then you have a jury of 12 people sitting there waiting to cast a decision on your life. You have you sitting there with a defender, with a lawyer, and then you have the DA sitting on the other side bringing up the charges against you. And then you have the bailiff in the courthouse, in the courtroom, maintaining all justice and law, quote unquote, justice and law in the courthouse. Let me break this symbolism down to you. This is actually the scene of Judgment Day from ancient Kemet, from the book of Coming Forth by Day, in the halls of a Saw. That's what this is. A Saw is the judge sitting on the stand. You have 12 scribes sitting on the side. You have I left that out. The court reporter. You have Tahuti taking down everything that takes place. You have a scales of Ma'at where your heart is being weighed. Haru, your public defender, takes you to the scale and weighs your heart against the feather of Ma'at. And you have Anubis, which is the DA, who's standing there bringing the charges against you. This is what's going on in the courthouse. This is the same scene that they took. Because everything you look at in this society, you can find it in history. They played this symbolism out in some way, form, or fashion when establishing power. The judge is God. That's what the judge is, because the judge has full power over life and death. The judge can say 75 years and your life is taken from you. Or the judge can say you can go free. And even if you're on trial by a jury and the jury says guilty, the judge can set aside that judgment. The judge has all power to set aside that judgment. The judge is God. And when you're sentenced to prison, you're dead. You've just been sentenced to death, and they know it, and it's stated in the language that they use. If you go to prison and you feel like you've been convicted unjustly, you can write what's called a habeas corpus. 1107, write a habeas corpus to get yourself brought back to court to fight your charge again. The word habeas corpus in Latin literally means to bring back the dead body. That's what the word literally means. So you'll write filing a paperwork asking them to bring you back to life. That's what you're literally doing. And so this is what's why when they put a Supreme Court member on the bench, they're there for life. They basically those old decrepit gods, those old mob figures who get to make full decisions and cannot really be checked by the people. Now,
that regardless if it was East Coast or West Coast, when I say Q and them, I'm referencing the entire era, not East or West, not the cats in California specifically as Huey. I'm talking about that entire construct, the Panther Party during that period of time. Like the brother said, there were a lot of nationalist, cultural nationalist organizations and whatnot in the area doing this and doing that. But the reality of it is, none of them, including the party, had the answer. They had pieces of the answer. They had parts of the answer. You know, when cats talk about we're the ideological heirs of Malcolm X, we're going in the streets to stand up to the pigs. And other cats say we're the ideological heirs of Malcolm X, and they go sit down with some books and wear dashikis and whatnot, have conversations or vote or whatever they do. The reality of it is again, whenever an ideology breaks off that particular, or you say you had this big piece of ideology, a piece of it goes this way, somebody goes that way. Each of those think that they have the ideology. They think that they've got the answer the way it's supposed to be. In reality, just like so much else, so esoteric in this, is that these cats have a piece, these cats have a piece, and in order for it to really do anything, it has to come back together. It's the same thing with religion. Your Christians think they completely right. Muslims think they completely right. Jews think they each have a piece of the puzzle. You put it back, i.e. go back far enough before it got fractured, then you start to see, this is what it was talking about. And there are countless lectures where people have broken down the particular nature of those different religions, Islam, Christianity, Judaism, and their particular expression of the more ancient, the fuller ancient text that they all pulled out of. So the party and its ideology, the United Slaves, or whoever else was going on that pulled out of this ideology of revolution, each had a piece of it, but by our nature and by our training, we've been taught to reject, in large part because of the cult of personality, because we didn't like Maulana Karenga because of the way he walked. We didn't like Huey because of the type of shotgun he had. Whatever bullshit excuse it was, we used it to rationalize and justify and tag all this other bullshit on rather than listening to them. The same way that folks do with Trump. Trump, when I quoted earlier, when they were talking about the whole removing statues and whatnot, you know, you can't take down the statue of General Sherman because blah, blah, blah. Trump hit it the fuck. I don't give a fuck what you think about him. Get out of the cult of personality. This dude stood in front of an audience and said, okay, will you take down Sherman? What about George Washington? Wasn't he a slave owner? He owned slaves? How about Thomas Jefferson? He was a major slave owner. So if you take down Sherman, you got to take down these cats too. What are you going to do? And it was a valid fucking point, but nobody heard it because they caught up in some pieced together sound bites that the media did. It's the same shit. We get caught up in tunnel vision. The party is this because the party bang hard. Why? Because the party is banging hard in the streets. I know cats that bang hard in college, in classrooms, that sit down and have the theoretical dissertations and interactions that folks have to have. You know, Huey and them learned from cats who wasn't in the street protesting. They read books by cats who had never picked up a 12 gauge. So we have to unite both of that mind and that foot and bring them back together. And if we can get over the personality and, well, this organization wasn't doing that or that person wasn't doing that, so it's whatever, and realize that maybe so, but I can't get trapped up in the cult of, oh, a daishiki, you wear a daishiki, this, and I mean, there's just this uppityness of, you know, I've got a black leather jacket on, so I'm harder than you. Well, I've got a daishiki on, so I'm more African than you. That's all bullshit. I haven't worn a daishiki war. Y'all know, I've hardly ever, you've rarely ever seen me in a daishiki or any type of print from the continent. Rarely, but I won't shut up about Africa. I've been in a beret a lot more than I've ever put on a kofi or a daishiki or any of that. So like I said, the reality of it is we keep taking bits and pieces of everything. It all goes together. You know, again, culture is not a daishiki. It's not, you know, the hat. It's not the hair. It's not none of it. It's like hip hop. Hip hop is not rap. Hip hop is not dancing. Hip hop is not the graffiti and all. It's none of that. It's what all of those things are trying to get to you. What it's trying to get across to you is the idea and the feel and the glide and the stride that we carry with us. But we keep getting caught up in what we see because we've been reduced to our five senses and aren't able to connect with one another beyond that. And so we get caught up in what white folks say, here, this is revolutionary. Read it because it's Marx and we don't like it. So it must be revolutionary. It must be, you know, it's a slap in our face. And it may well be. I got no problem with Chairman Mao. I got no problem with Marx. Marx gave the best breakdown of the evils of capitalism ever. He's the standard for understanding capitalism if you really want to understand it. So I got no problem with Marx. But the reality of it is, it's that fifth ideology, the one we can't talk about, the one that brings the first four together and in alignment and makes it so that we can move like a gorilla ideologically. If I need to be a Pan-Africanist today, that's what I'm going to do to move the people forward. If next week I got to be an African-centered, you know, black nationalist, that's what I'm going to do. If I got to get in the street with a 12 gauge and walk with the masses of the people and liberate us and take some heads while I'm at it, that's what I'm going to do. I'm not tied to any one of these ideas. I'm not crystallized in any of this shit. You'll never trap me like that. You know,
Anybody has to give the okay. But what I would say is a collective gives the okay. And let me define it when I say the collective. In other words, a person sets out to do the work of the Panther, do the work to continually building on the legacy of what it means to be a Black Panther. In order to do that, basically, it's the people that defines whether or not this person is operating at the level or operating in conjunction with what the righteousness goals were of the Panther. And I would say that bottom line is you have to take the 10-point platform and the local objectives, primarily the 10-point platform, and live by those principles and concepts. Now, in saying that, different variations of the 10-point platform have been utilized and erected across different formations, as well as not all of them even have a 10-point. But the bottom line is you have to be operating from a platform. The platform basically gets into, and I just say most of every formation I've seen at least starts number one, I was saying in reference to freedom. The third development of Panthers used to say, we want freedom, we want the power to determine the destiny of our Black community. Whereas in San Diego, we say we are gaining freedom, we promote the power of practicing self-determination and determining the destiny of our communities and defining the Black nation. But the point being is that what makes a Panther is someone that is operating within the guise of the 10-point platform. I would just say the platform for the sole purpose of being a revolutionary and engaging the Black people toward the liberation struggle and mobilizing the masses towards self-determination. And we always refer to oftentimes as saying the Panther is the vanguard for the people. And what we mean by the vanguard, not to be confused with the security force vanguard of the internal structure of the third development of Black Panther Party. Vanguard basically means that your life no longer belongs to you, but it belongs to the people. And that's why I say the people define whether or not you are actually living up to the legacy of what it means to be a Black Panther. So in saying that you are a vanguard, basically saying that you first and foremost are putting your life and life and liberty at stake for the sake of bringing the people towards self-determination. And also, even going back to what we were saying earlier with the four, the concept of four, we can talk about that by engaging from the standpoint of a Panther needing to be spiritually, culturally, and politically consciousness and mentally consciousness of what it takes to raise our people to a high level of consciousness. And a Panther always must respect and be courteous to the people and at all times. You know, we can't take from the people. That's a part of our general orders as well. And oftentimes we say militant, a Panther must be militant, and that has to do with the discipline aspect necessary to operate on a higher level, as well as it has to do with the fact that we must recognize that from a military-like structure or from military-like overstanding is that we're dealing with warfare. Our people are at war. So knowing that our people are at war, we consider, you know, our operating battleground I'm operating apparatus, a warfare or a battleground. And by being a battleground, basically we know we're at war, and knowing we're at war, meaning we have a level of militancy or level of military discipline that must be intact. We must be humble with our people. And so from those standpoints, to me, that's what defines and what makes a Panther. Now, obviously, from the outside looking in, a person would just say, oh, you wearing a beret. That means you represent the Black Panther Party. You can buy a beret. Anybody can buy a beret, throw a patch on it, and call themselves a Black Panther, but that don't mean that they're doing the work and representing liberation for our people. So, in essence, a Panther is whether you put a beret on or not. And that's another misconception, that you have to have a beret on to be a Panther. That's not true. Not at all. It's about doing the work for the people. It's about doing the work to raise our people to a high level of consciousness, operating through a platform that codifies what needs to be done to raise our people to that level and where we are headed as a people as it applies to self-determination.
48 is not the number of people that's a part of this council, but 48 represents an ideal, a concept. 48 can be rounded out from a numerical symbolic point of view. All schools of builders in ancient times believed that numbers had a philosophical viewpoint to them. All schools of builders believe this at some point. For instance, give you a good example. 4 has been historically accepted to represent foundation. If you look at a house has a 4-sided foundation. Look at the planet itself. When we deal with direction, we look at north, east, south, and west. We look at 4 directions. Look at the human body. We got 2 legs and 2 arms. So that 4-sided foundation, 4 has come to represent a foundation. And this is what we'll call ourselves building on, a revolutionary foundation of knowledge. 8, if you look at the number 8, it's basically an infinity symbol. And we talk about revolutionary continuity. But infinity has its 2 extremes, its ability to build and its ability to destroy. Birth and death in it. So when we understand continuity, we understand that something will die and something will be rebuilt again. And this is where we come from with these concepts of 48. 48 has in recent times, in contemporary times, been used as the number for expressing philosophy. We can look at Robert Greene's 48 Laws of Power, or we can go all the way to Pimpin' Ken's 48 Laws Rules of the Game with his Pimpology book. All of these people keep expressing a foundation of philosophies with 48, and we are expressing the foundation of philosophies for Panther revolutionary ideology with the same principle. Not saying that the Panther 48 will be limited to these three, but this three also has its numerical representation. Three in ancient times has always represented rebirth. And we believe that the foundation of any true revolutionary ideology is founded or comes from three different but compatible backgrounds. Usually revolutionaries rise up. If you look at every revolutionary throughout history, if you just look into the history of the Panther Party, you'll find these three: the college campus, collegiate, the military, the militant, or the street cat. You'll find these people rising from these different environments and becoming the major leaders and major voices in those revolutionary organizations. And these three that I just described can be represented by Stokely Carmichael coming from the college campus, Geronimo Pratt coming from the military, and people like Bunchy Carter coming from the streets.